All right. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Diversifi Ventures Speaker Series. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Yasna Vismale, currently a junior at the Columbia University studying sustainable development and psychology. Philosophy. So, where do I start with what you do? I mean, you future author of Werk Your Net, equity research analyst at BLK Capital Management, Coca Cola Scholar, columnist for the Columbia Daily Spectator, Forbes Under 30 Scholar, and a lot more stuff. So I think there's so much that we can learn from you and people listening in can really take away from this conversation. So really excited to have you on. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So, right before we started, we were talking about a little bit how your path to where you are is a little unorthodox. And it kind of, you have such a variety of different experiences that have contributed to like where you are now. So I kind of wanted to get a little bit about your background and, what is it that made you go, or what is it that attracted you to Columbia? And how did you see that place to be the best fit fit your career path?
Well, Columbia was definitely my dream school. And I think for me, it was kind of a mixture of my own desire to continue on a very academic, rigorous path, but also, be able to flourish as a creative, as someone who loves music, as someone who is in the fashion industry, as someone who just loves people and, wanted to be surrounded by literally the world's people. Like New York has people from every place in the world, and you can tell by the food. It's bomb. And also just like, the different neighborhoods. And yeah, I guess like another factor, especially that I did want to highlight was as a low income student, it was one of the few schools that would actually give me a full ride based on my financial aid.
Wow.
And if you make under $60,000, you automatically get a free ride if you get into Columbia. And, while Columbia was my dream school in every sense, in terms of academic rigor, the people, the creative scene, realistically, another part of my motivation was to make sure that I could go to college without putting any burden on my mom, without having any student loans, any debt. And that was it. It was the full package.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, obviously that sounds so attractive, especially for a lot of those people, just like you said, like low income, a lot of underrepresented minorities come from those, financially disadvantaged backgrounds. And I think that's such a great achievement of yours to have been able to achieve that. Something I did want to touch upon, right before you got to Columbia is when you were in high school, you were the founder and co-president of Girls Who Code. Which again, there's just so many different experiences that are just so cool. And I'd love to hear about what kind of stemmed that and motivated you to start that at your high school.
Yeah, so I started this club with my partner, Alexandria Storm, who goes to the other Berkeley, not you, UC Berkeley.
Right.
And basically what inspired us to, create this organization was simply just being in the computer science class. Like I looked around, I was pretty much 1 out of 5 girls, and I was definitely the only person of color taking this computer science class. So I was also part of this program called Young Executives of Color, which really, really shaped my outlook and just understanding of, my next steps. So through this program, it's hosted by the University of Washington and their Foster Business School. I connected with basically Girls Who Code, who was doing a stand, and they're like, do you want to set something up? And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect because this is how I've been feeling. And now I can actually really make a difference. So yeah, so we made it happen and we raised the percentage. So before Girls Who Code, or I guess like in a year, we were able to raise the percentage of women and girls, because they're not women yet, girls enrolled in the AP computer science class from 11% to 48%. So a 30% or 300% increase in enrollment.
That's amazing. And so within that club, what is it that you guys do to kind of help guide these girls into this, maybe explore a career path they weren't maybe thinking about from before?
Yeah, I guess like the first thing was it created a a safe space for girls to even have the confidence to even look at computer science, especially looking at a lot of the stigma is, oh, okay, the people who code are like nerdy dudes that like don't have social skills and eat chips and Gatorade and stuff. But that's totally not true. Anyone can be a coder. Everyone should be a coder, just as Barack Obama said, it is not necessarily just a one-track field, but it can really help you with everything, because it's just problem solving in a specific format.
I completely agree. Yeah, I have a little bit under my belt as well. I have a little bit of Python, JavaScript, and I think that just like you said, like it helps you tackle problems in a different way, because computers don't think the same way that humans. You kind of have to really like explain every little bit to it. So once you understand how to problem solve that way, just like you said, it really breaks down these problems in a different way that you might have, like another perspective that you might not have had from before. And I think that what you said about breaking the stigma, I think that's the name of the game right now. I think that's really great in a lot of different things. And I think that's what we're doing here too as well, like trying to break the stigma of what the financial industry has been before and what we're trying to do now. So I wanted to kind of talk about as well is because you've had so many broad different things going on. How did you kind of decide where it was that you wanted to do and end up in the financial services, but yet you still explore your passions? You still do the Columbia Daily Spectator, and you're writing this book, which we'll touch upon a little bit later. But I kind of wanted to get how you navigated this career path.
So, I guess I navigated to the financial career path simply because, restating again, as someone who is low income, someone who comes from a low income background, financial literacy, just understanding the relationship between how, I guess, like being in a constant experiences where money always had leverage over me, rather than being able to control my understanding and knowledge of, so this is a microeconomic reason to, I guess, a macroeconomic career path.
Yeah,
but that was kind of essentially what drove me to even desire to pursue that path. And while I am interested in, pursuing the financial services path, I'm also open to, and I've also been looking at business strategy or, ways that I can still create like financial models and look at macroeconomic trends within the tech space as well. So I'm not necessarily committing fully to anything yet, especially as a student. And I think we forget that as students is, what we're doing for the next step is not forever. And, within our generation, people switch jobs, career paths so frequently that, your first job might not even be what your full career path is. That to say is, I still do have a very keen interest in this field, but, I just wanted to kind of show the ambiguity in terms of, being able to do whatever you want, but making, still having a lot of interest, just taking a certain direction as of now, understanding it's not forever, and just, learning along the way, being flexible.
Yeah, 100%. I think people get really caught up and, like if I don't get this great job, like right out the gates, like my whole career is going to be over. Like they put a lot of pressure on that initial, or just like these initial steps. And I think it's a marathon. It's not really a race. I think that's a great way. And, you also take off that pressure of being able to explore your, actually what you want. And I think that's something you're doing. That's amazing. Like how you're able to juggle so many of these things and actually explore your passions and, build that toolbox of resources that you'll be able to later apply. So I wanted to talk about one of the greatest things of why I brought you on this podcast is Werk Your Net. I think this is so amazing, especially how it's really tailored to us, to these underrepresented minorities that aren't really traditionally tailored to these kind of the financial industry or just like corporate America in general. And we don't really have a playbook. I think that programs like MLT, SEO, they do a really great job, but there's still a gap that we need to address. And I think that's what you're doing is really, really great. So I'd love to hear about a little bit more about the book. What drove you to do this? And, anything else you'd want to tell us about us?
Yeah, so Werk Your Net, it focuses on bridging the gap bridging and diversifying our network. So the primary audience is for students like us, students who are from underrepresented background and want to learn how to network professionally and in academic spheres, because kind of like debunking the common notion around our communities is, a lot of us think that we don't know how to network, which is so not true. We just don't call it that, and we may not be as comfortable in professional spaces. So, when you actually think about networking, it can be applied to going to a birthday party, going to a family barbecue, going to church, going to the club, really. Like it is really just talking to people, creating a genuine connection with them and continuing that connection. Your network is not just for job opportunities. Your network serves as your lifeline. So, you can also look at it as your family members. Like your mom is your network. My mom is my network because she gave me support. I wouldn't be here without her, if I didn't have a house or a roof over my head, or someone who would work up to 3 jobs just so I didn't have to take a job myself and I could really apply my academics so I could even have the bandwidth to apply and qualify for Columbia, right. Which, it's a different story. I'm not going to go on a tangent, but so yeah, basically the reason why I wanted to write this book was, so I think Michelle Obama's mom couldn't have said this better. She said, Michelle and Barack are not special. There are millions of Michelles and Baracks around the world. And what she means by that is, she's not saying that Michelle isn't extraordinary, because she is. Right. Like Michelle is, Michelle, right?
It's self-explanatory.
Exactly. But the thing is, oftentimes people from our backgrounds are not necessarily given the chance, given the opportunity, or have access to the tools or necessary skills in order to reach their full potential. And with this book, I want to help students be able to tap into their potential that they already have, because they are the next Michelles. We just don't know them yet. And also the secondary audience is for industry leaders, people who are in positions of power. They don't necessarily have to be minorities. They don't have to be from underrepresented backgrounds, but they need to at least have a desire to make change within our industry. Also, I guess it doesn't really make sense to not be diverse. Because, as a McKinsey report stated, I forgot, I'm not going to mess up the numbers, but I think it was around companies that did hire in gender inclusivity. So I think companies that had over 30% women in their, in their companies, although it should be 50, but it just shows that we have a long way to go. But
exactly.
These companies that did hire in their gender statistics actually were more profitable. I think 23% more profitable. And then for ethnic racial diversity, it was around 35% more diverse, or 33% more diverse. Don't quote me on these exact numbers, but it was around there. So, diversity is not just, it should not just be lip service. It should not be from the mentality that you're doing this out of your goodwill and you want to just be a better person and help, save minorities. It's literally better for your business, period. So, with this book, I want to show industry leaders in how they can create their spaces to be more accessible, how they can, create spaces that are more that have higher retention for diversity, and not just have it as something as an add-on, as a cherry on top, but have it as the core, have it as the foundation of that company where it's inherently diverse, because there's so many different people within it already. Like CEO, not just HR, not just the global diversity officer, but the CEO. I want the CEO to be diverse. I want, or, not, a person of color, a queer woman, someone from a Muslim background, yeah. So that, oh, also, sorry, I forgot to add. So Werk Your Net, a few updates is I'm going to be publishing December 2020.
Awesome.
And I just finished my month-long campaign, raised 5K in 5 days.
Wow.
So beat my goal, and that was, I was supposed to be given a month, and then in a month, raised 8.5K, beating both goals in terms of being able to afford hardcover options and audiobook options. So I had to wear my net to, make this, to make this book possible.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you know what I really, really do love about the concept behind this book is that it's twofold, because, I think a lot of the resources that we have right now are addressing the people that are going into the thing, but nothing is being done of the existing infrastructure of corporate America and trying to actually help them understand and learn how to make it more accessible for us, because it really is two-sided. It really doesn't work if we are just going in with all this knowledge and this availability and openness to go in, and we're not getting the same response on the other side. So I think it's really twofold, and I think that that's a key niche that you're addressing. I really, really do admire that. And that kind of goes a little bit to some of the experiences that you had. And I want to ask you about, you've had so many different experiences with, shadowing different CEOs and working in different firms. I wanted to ask you about the different types of like jobs that you've held and internships. Like, what are some of those things that you saw that you saw that the progressiveness to really make it more inclusive? But at the same time, where are some of those shortcomings that we still need to work? Where are those opportunity gaps that we still need to address?
Okay. So I think based on a lot of my experiences, people don't really know what diversity means.
Right.
Or they think they know, or they kind of know, and they know their stats are really bad, so they do a lot of lip service, and try to stretch it into diversity of thought. Like, oh my God, look at this one Stanford person who studied psychology and is in finance. Whoa, look at this Harvard person who studied history and is at the same firm. Wow, like diversity of thought. And it's like, yes, that is, diverse in terms of what they studied.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at, and I go to an Ivy League too.
Right.
So I understand the privilege that I have from simply having access to all of Columbia's resources, which I know is not applicable to most people. So going back onto this question, I would like more effort into understanding what diversity means. And what diversity means is just simply people who are different. Like, no one can be inherently diverse. We have to look at diversity in terms of our relationships. So, and no one, even let's say, just because you're a Black person, you're not diverse. If you're a Black person and you have Black friends, your friendships are not diverse.
Right.
The reason why, Black and brown and queer and, all these communities are even considered to be diverse is because the norm is cisgendered, straight, white men from prehistorically, high-ranking colleges.
Right.
So I would like for them to understand how they're also playing a role in diversity, but also kind of minimizing their relation, because like diversity as yeah. I
see what your point is. They're contributing at the same time, but that there's a give and a take there. There needs to be a balance.
There needs to be a balance, and it's just we just need to diversify our networks. So that means we need more cis, straight, old, white men to be talking to, you know, trans, queer, Hispanic women, like, you know, just like, it doesn't have to be that specific, but I'm just saying, like, it's a two-way street and we need to treat it as such. Another pattern that I've kind of noticed is a lot of recruiters asking me, like, where are the qualified candidates from underrepresented backgrounds? And I think that mentality is also kind of detrimental in the search because they already have a specific profile in mind.
Right.
And, you know, especially if you don't have those people already represented, you're never going to be able to find who you're looking for, especially based on your requirements. And it's not that you're lowering your requirements when you're making your spaces accessible. You're just changing them because it's not going to be applicable to everyone. Like the SAT, if you were only based, if your credentials were only based on the SAT score, I can tell you for sure that I would not be considered qualified. Like I did good enough to be in the bottom, you know, percentile of Columbia, which is, I guess, pretty good, but like not really. And you know, there's people who've literally bombed their SAT scores but are brilliant. They simply just can't be showing their brilliance through this one test that also is catered to people who have a lot of money and can
right. A whole other discussion.
a whole other story. We're not gonna spill that too.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying though. There's definitely that little thing going on with the tests, I would say. But I think that's a little bit of a callback again to, you know, breaking that stigma, being able to be open to these different qualities and being able to understand that qualified people come from all different types of backgrounds. They don't come from one certain institution. They don't come from a group, you know, like, I think that that's something that I'm trying to build as well, trying to really bridge this gap from undergraduate institutions that don't have these diversity initiatives. They just don't have, they have that diverse population at their schools, but they don't have access to these resources. They don't understand that, you know, SEO, MLT, all these things exist. And we need to be able to help them understand that, because that's how these underrepresented minorities come to the forefront. That's how these people find out that there's qualified candidates everywhere. And that should be the case all the time. One of the things that that really stood out to me was that you had the opportunity to job shadow two CEOs, Manny Medina and remind me the other one's name, Billy Bosworth. Yeah, Billy Bosworth. So I wanted to hear a little bit about that experience and how, you know, you've been able to take, especially Billy Bosworth as a mentor, and maybe for some of the people that are listening, how you initiated that relationship, because I think mentorship, especially for people from, you know, that don't know how to navigate corporate America, it's super important, you know, having that mentorship, that sponsorship. So how did you go about initiating that relationship, and, you know, what kind of advice can you give to people that are looking to find a mentor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually writing my second book with Billy. So
oh, wow.
We're tight. And he's the one who's like, let's do it. And I'm like, aren't you like running a company or something? But anyways, basically I got connected with Billy Bosworth through another mentor, Nora Addy. And I connected with him through the program Young Executives of Color. He was a speaker and he was like, yeah, hit me up. He was really cool. And I was like, cool. So I hit him up, and I was actually one of the few students who did. So one advice is just like, when people tell you to hit them up. Yeah. And make sure you don't wait too long so they don't forget you. Not that, you know, I'm sure you're not, I'm sure you're unforgettable in many ways, but people forget, you know, so you want to like contact them within 24 hours. That's pretty much my policy in terms of returning emails, returning texts, exchanging with people that I may not necessarily be as close with, just so they are, or like I'm already on their brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to Noah, I talked to him, and then I also decided to take a gap year before coming to Columbia. So here, I asked him, I was like, hey, like, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley because I also won a scholarship, Coca Cola Scholarship. And I met a lot of cool friends there, a lot of friends at Stanford and USC and Berkeley. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave Seattle and go plan a super low budget trip to California. And that's what I did. And I also asked Noah, like, do you know anyone in Silicon Valley I could talk to? So he's like pretty big on Twitter. So he just like posted a tweet and it got viral. And one of the people working for Billy was like, hey, like, you like kids? I'm not in a weird way, but you like being a mentor. Like you, cause like he's a coach. He has 3 girls.
Right.
He loves being a mentor. That's like his whole thing. But yeah, so we make it happen. And then I go to California for a month. And for one of the days, I job shadow him. I job shadow a few other executives and like the COO within the company data stacks. And I really just get a rundown of what every person's position looks like, because I mean, I guess like looking back, it is really cool to know exactly what a CEO does, because I feel like it's very ambiguous and many of us don't necessarily have that opportunity to, you know, job shadow CEO.
Right.
So looking back, it was a very, very fulfilling experience. And it also really affirmed what I wanted to do, you know, because Billy wasn't just showing me what he was doing. He was showing me what I could do in the future. And I think that's what really is important about a mentor is, you know, you don't necessarily have to be in the same field as them. You don't necessarily have to have the same type of mentality or thinking as them. You know, he is an old white dude in Silicon Valley. You know, he was, I think he was Serbian, Eastern European. But, you know, we have a lot of different philosophies in life. We have a lot of different work ethic and just like how we think in terms of the future. But just like in terms of his advice, his ability to connect me with his friends. So Manny Medina, I connected with him through Billy. He's one of Billy's good friends. And, you know, I connected with a lot of other Billy's friends. Actually, they low-key funded my book campaign. But I'm just saying, you know, mentorship is very important in just like helping you, allow you to think about what you're capable of and not just what you have learned you can do so far. And for reaching out to people, reach out to them when you're a college student, especially. You know, of course, anyone should be reaching out, but when you're a college student, you have a lot of power because you are the face of the next generation. You know, people are looking at you and they're like, oh my God, that's going to be the next CEO in the next, you know, 30 years. Like, I got to follow them. Or, you know, they're going to do something big. We have that potential. So make sure that you tap into it. And, you know, I think a lot more people are more willing to be helpful than we think. So, you know, there's going to be rejections. There's going to be people who don't have time. There's going to be people who make time, but not that much. There's going to be people who will say they will, but not really. But there's always going to be someone out there, you know, just reaching out to them, someone out there that really sees you for you and sees more than what you can see for yourself. And yeah, that's my advice.
Wow. Well, very, very wise words. I love it. I wanted, see, this is another, like, just another great thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because it's something that I learned about a little bit more about in the internship that I had this summer was, you know, the importance and the progress that we're making on the sustainable side of, you know, just being more progressive with, you know, the blue economy, the green economy, just making sure that we're really taking care of the environment and trying to hit the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I worked at an investment bank this summer that focuses on sustainability impact investments. And so that's something that you are, you know, that's your major, sustainable development. So I wanted to kind of hear, like, what is your passion? What drove you to choose that? And then I know that as well, you did research for carbon with the goal of reducing carbon emissions, and that I'd love to hear about as well.
Yeah, for sure. So what got me really interested in sustainable development is I mean, it really is the only major that is its actual action plan, sustainable development.
Yeah.
And I think the combination between sustainable development and philosophy was the theoretical analysis in terms of helping me learn how to think critically and also speak and write in a way that is clear and concise. Although, so some philosophers just talk just to talk, but also, knowing how to sort through the BS when people are just talking versus seeing the content that they have within their message. But so sustainable development, it is a very vague terminology, and there's so many things that you can do with it. But I found it as kind of an action plan, as the execution that I could kind of use in relation to philosophy. And it's also really applicable to everything and anything, because everything that we are doing is on Earth. Everything. And sustainable development is also, I think, really important for people from underrepresented backgrounds, especially because it is such a Eurocentric field, as many fields are. Right. And when that happens, when only white people make solutions that are going to be affecting the world, there's going to be a lot of gaps in knowledge.
100%.
There's going to be a lot of gaps in the solutions, and also even if a solution is, potentially actually being able to reduce the carbon or, greenhouse emissions, it still might negatively affect a certain community which just didn't have a say in the conversation. Right. So, an example is nuclear power is technically renewable energy or clean energy because it doesn't emit carbon dioxide. But what it does is, most of these plants are near low-income communities of color who don't necessarily have a say, who don't have the financial means to move somewhere else. And, they are affected by nuclear waste. And, that comes into health, which also affects us educationally. If you can't focus on your health, you can't focus on your education. Mm-hmm. It also affects social mobility. If you can't focus on your academics, it's going to be harder to move up in society, all of that. So as someone who also really likes to understand relationships and understanding how to pick the bigger picture, I think it just comes from coming from a biracial background, someone who's Japanese and Afro-Caribbean, always seeing kind of that having that cognitive dissonance within my own identity in terms of, okay, how do I even exist with these two extremely different cultures, being born with so much diversity within me? How is it all connected? And how does it connect to the real world, So I think sustainable development and philosophy kind of have allowed me to understand and analyze how the bigger picture is connected to micro events, is connected to specific individuals who are, doing certain activities. And then my research also kind of combats that. It uses a mixture of philosophical questions in the intentionality between my questions. And it also, it is a sustainable development thing. So I've been working under the vice president of undergrad education for about a year or so. I just got 2 grants for the summer. So I had 4 plans being canceled for summer because of Corona. Right. And luckily I got funding, and I've been being able to continue it. And, so far right now, I just finished my first test trial with 55 respondents. So I'm writing a survey for the entire undergrad population to kind of gauge how we can reduce, because we can create so many solutions, but if people are not willing to take it on themselves, if people don't have a stake or don't think that they have a stake in it themselves, it's not going to be an effective solution. So the point of this survey is to understand what students believe versus how they act, which actions they're willing to take on themselves in order to reduce their own carbon footprint, and which actions they're not, even if it is a really good solution. For example, technically, if the US were to put like the, one child for family policy, it would actually probably reduce a lot of carbon dioxide, simply looking at the amount of greenhouse emissions that we create as people. We breathe out carbon dioxide. We have all these activities that all kind of deplete energy just because we exist. But we're not going to go all like Thanos in the US also. Just like policy wise, it would never work.
Right.
So just looking at that solution versus actually decarbonizing our transportation system, all that type of stuff. Seeing solutions that are viable, but also seeing solutions that are realistic and are going to be readily adopted.
That's awesome. In your opinion, do you see ourselves really realistically being able to hit these UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030?
Not really, honestly.
There's a lot of work to be done.
Although, as horrible as the effects of COVID were on, especially low-income communities of color, in terms of global emissions, it was actually pretty good.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
And, so honestly, as someone who's been researching this topic, as many technical advancements that we can create, our tendency is to often use more of a product, even if it's more efficient, which kind of depletes the purpose of, actually being able to reduce our overall emissions just because we're using a different technological platform that allows us to use less. So, looking at coal versus natural gas. Natural gas in comparison to coal is environmentally friendly because of, I'm not going to go all science, but but yes, in comparison, it's better, but it is still not that great for our environment.
Right.
And it still, emits carbon or carbon dioxide. So, while we are transitioning to a natural gas earth or environment in the US, and slowly phasing out of using coal, it is still just continuing and perpetuating the problem because we're using just more natural gas. And we also have a lot of people. I think the solution is to simply use less, just using less energy, so whether it is turning off the lights every single time, or, deciding that you're not actually going to go on that shopping spree and maybe buying clothes from secondhand stores. Or maybe it means that, okay, you know what, I'm actually not going to go on that cruise, or I'm not going to take that plane to Hawaii. Or, it's just about being conscientious about your overall footprint because we exist, because we are people, we're going to be using energy, and we will be contributing to just greenhouse gases inevitably.
Right.
However, if we're just conscious about how our impact is affecting the bigger picture, we can truly actually make a difference in reducing our overall impact.
Wow. Yeah, I really like that. I think it's everybody's responsibility because, in the end, it's our resources. They're only a certain amount. They're limited. So we really need to make a difference if we really want to hit this goal. I want to take a little step back. And I know that we've hit a bit of this point, throughout this series is, how can individuals help progress diversity and inclusion? I think it's a misconception that, it needs to be done on an institutional level, and that change will only come when on the institutional level changes. But I think that as individuals can help progress this. And I think that, you, a woman of, really big ideas, I think you'd have a great input here. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I think I guess I personally think it works both ways. We need the individual impact. We need individuals to come out and be like, all right, this is something that affects me, either if it's directly or indirectly, but I have a stake in this and I need to be a part of this. While it also does need to be effective in the institutional level and creating, I guess, a more sustainable long-term impact. But it starts with the individual, because it's all very intertwined. If you don't have the individual take on the responsibility and just put it on institutions, then it's going to be it's always going to be someone else's problem. I think what we really need to do is just, as individuals, look at our own friend groups, look at our own social circles, and ask ourselves, how diverse are my relationships, with the people that I'm closest with?
Right.
Why am I close with them? Why am I not closer with other people who, I just haven't really taken the time to get to know? Because I think a big problem that we have is we always compartmentalize our relationships in terms of, oh, this is us and this is them, and in every community, especially underrepresented communities, while we have a lot more challenges we face in society, I think we also forget that our challenges are intertwined with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I see a lot of protests in the Black community saying that, it's a Black issue, not a women's issue, not a queer issue, not a trans issue. But you have to realize that all of these issues are intertwined, and also,
right.
Intersectionality, right?
Right.
There are Black women, there are Black queer women, there are Black trans men, there are,
100%.
And everyone just needs to, if we can understand the intersectionality and diversity within our own communities and appreciate them, then we can actually, come together and solve the bigger issue rather than being as divisive within ourselves. Because, if you're divided within your own community, there's only so much that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
I love it.
Does that make sense?
The importance of empathy within your community, and just being able to understand that the issues aren't just theirs. It's really ours. It's as the human race, we need to understand that if one group of people is being marginalized or like some type of similar act is being done against them, it's not just against them, it's as a human race. We need to understand that equality means all of us. So we need to be empathetic of others. And I think you really summed that up great. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about is, for a student that might just be coming into undergrad, or even maybe just like at the high school level, just getting ready to get into college, and might be interested in a career in finance, what is that advice that you'd give them, without, them starting without any network, any resources? What would you give them, guidance wise?
So I would say Google and the students at your school are going to be your best resource. I came into Columbia with essentially zero background. I didn't even understand what a stock was. I didn't know what a mutual fund or equity or anything. All these terminologies were very foreign to me. Right. And I guess, like, if you come to trying to understand the financial industry as a language, it actually is really helpful, because, honestly, half of the battle is just learning the vocabulary. And that just means surrounding yourself with either people or YouTube videos or terminologies, which are going to help you just, step by step, be able to analyze what these words even mean, and how to use it within a sentence. Another, I guess, piece of advice I would have is reach out to people, keep on reaching out to people, and just like be annoying and ask questions, because that's what college is for. And you know, another thing that I would really advise is just like going to any student club and asking if there's a finance person there. You don't necessarily even have to join a finance club. Like I found my first mentor, who is now at Barclays, actually by attending the Black Student Organization. And, you know, on the first day, there's a bunch of Black people, and they just asked, like, do you have any questions? And I was like, yep. Do you have any person in finance that I can talk to? And that is literally how I got into finance. And also, like, if you do want to join a finance club, try to find someone in that club before you even apply. If your school is nice and doesn't have an application process, just join. That's awesome. Some schools will kind of force you to go through an application process, which is also a little bit problematic, because, you know, how are you supposed to apply and be qualified if you don't have the qualifications, but, you know, obviously are capable of. So, you know, finding someone from that organization, and that means going on Facebook and just like looking at that club, seeing when they meet, when they have conferences or events, attending those events, just talking to people from that club, see who you click with, and just like be annoying. I mean, don't be annoying because you want to, for this one, don't be annoying, but reach out to them, see who you like, continue that relationship, and be like, hey, I'm really interested in joining this club. Can you help me apply to this whatever? If you can't directly help me, can you direct me to resources that I can use in order to apply to this club? Also reach out to alumni, because and you know,
right.
LinkedIn.
Yasna, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode. Are there any last words you want to leave for the people watching?
Let's see. Well, okay. Next time you want to apply to something, next time you think of a next opportunity, don't ask yourself, or don't tell yourself that you're not qualified. You know, look at Chad, whose dad is the CEO of Bank of America, who got his internship from Family Connections. Like, he wasn't either. The point isn't if you're capable of doing it right now, because no one is really capable of doing any opportunity until they get into that experience, which means everyone is capable, you know, which means there's just going to be a small learning curve when you actually tap into that opportunity, you know, when you fail a few times, but, you know, you kind of learn and navigate your way through. So know that you're qualified, know that you're brilliant, and, you know, oftentimes that we're kind of slept on. So don't sleep on yourself.
I think that's great. Yeah, beautiful words. Yasna, thank you so much. Everyone be on the lookout for Werk Your Net. Will be published December of this year. Really looking forward to it. And yeah, I look forward to carrying on the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I hope you have a great day.
Yeah,